slotted the barrel in. This was a kind of like a 9-inch barrel, longer, much longer than the Liberator barrel. And then we did the pull cord. John's brother was out there as well. And the way because the first one had exploded, we were all much further from the test at that time. And he pulled it, and we heard the crack, and I think there was like the kind of spark of dust or something, and it was like, did it work? And everyone was kind of too far away to see, so we were all running toward it because, like, did the front of the barrel blow off or something? I didn't see any pieces. Did you see any pieces? And we got up to it, and it was just like, we have this on video too. I don't know if it'll ever kind of come out, but we were all just screaming like, "Holy fuck!" Like, "Oh my god!" And just jumping up and down. And again, like, to the liberal conscience, this is extremely terrifying and nothing worth celebrating. But an extreme kind of like technical demonstration for the apocalypse, but it was amazing, and it was like a real heightened moment of euphoria because I knew everything would come. Even though we hadn't proved it out yet, I knew everything would come because the plastic barrels work, and it was just kind of like, just something you had to take for granted that they wouldn't. And not only did they work, and this was the kind of the beautiful moment of the rest of that day, while the sun was setting, while we still had daylight, we just kept shooting bullets through that barrel. We wanted to see, okay, well, it works once. How many more times will it work? And the kind of like unbelievable answer was that it worked 5 times and then 6 times. And we would just pull the cartridges out, stack them on this wooden table. 7 times, 8 times, and we'd go to the car. And at this point, the bore was expanding. And this is the failure mode, by the way, of Liberator barrels. Not brittle stress failure, but just expansion of the bore. We began to have to put tape in the bore because it was expanding too much, and then a little bit of motor oil to help with extraction. There's no good way of extracting a cartridge from a Liberator if you shot one. It's kind of a stressful thing. But then 9 and then 10, and then on 10 it cracked, but we were like, fuck it, I think it can do one more. And it did, so it did 11, and we were like, wow, I feel like, I thought I was going to give you more technical stuff, but I feel like I'm giving you the emotional stuff. So yeah, whatever. At that moment, it was all there. John's brother saw it, I saw it. And of course, we would keep coming back out because we had work to do. And at that point, I felt comfortable notifying the media, and this is a bit now into my media strategy. Even though the Liberator, by and large, as a prototype, wasn't finished, I alerted our confidant, Andy Greenberg, Forbes, and the BBC. I told them a date when they should be out in Austin. I said, no matter what, I'm going to have it ready by then. Of course, it's a total bluff, but at the moment it had to be. I want it to be May 1, May Day. So kind of just to resurrect that some historical poetry. Yeah, couldn't quite make May Day. We had some problems. John was at work a lot, and we had to settle how we were going to do the nail. But maybe some more technical things for you. The springs for the Liberator. By the way, John didn't know Autodesk. He was an electrical engineer and not a material. He didn't have a materials background, and though his job put him around a bunch of mechanical engineers who kind of helped him out with learning constraining and doing CAD and stuff, he never really knew CAD. A lot of the guys that I had doing CAD work for us for these defense distributed receivers and magazines, they were adept at SolidWorks, some of the other major kind of commercial suites because they were students in school and they could get cheap academic licenses. John didn't have any CAD and had never really used it. But because I just trusted his intuition so much, he was so educated and so committed. This guy is a guns guy, you know what I mean? He carries everywhere. He has them just like in his car, and everywhere he is, there's a gun kind of somewhere available. He taught himself how to do the Liberator as his kind of first CAD project, and I thought, though we didn't really emphasize it then, I think it is a testament to how easy this technology is to learn and to do. Which is itself a kind of terrifying realization for the progressive, kind of dependent upon the expensive assets of production, and cultural production. No, anyone can download these softwares and familiarize himself with the means of these productions, to their benefit. So one of the most difficult at the time aspects of low-end 3D printing a gun, was done by a novice, even though he had, some educational advantage. The Liberator springs were pillaged from a toy car on Thingiverse. We were looking at how to do a printed spring. It wouldn't be enough to do. We'd seen rubber band concepts and other things. That's just not enough. We wanted this gun to be, in a sense, in a black magic kind of way. The way that these liberals were talking about 3D printing, creating, like the machine from nothing. It couldn't have those kinds of very visible seams, like rubber bands or something. Now I know, granted, it has this nail, but somehow the nail, I don't know, it got past the liberal defense mechanism. It's kind of buried in the gun. You don't see it. The machine, as you see the machine, is just fully fabricated out of, whole stock out of plastic, and that is it at its most kind of terrifying apogee. So the springs had to be plastic, and we didn't know it could work. And we had help from a guy, Michael Gusslick, other people who were collaborating a little bit on the outside. Michael Gusslick, by the way, is the godfather of gun printing. Maybe in the questions we can get to it, but we had thought for a long time, how are we going to control off-axis tensions in this spring? We just wanted kind of X, Y, we didn't want Z. And then, to John's credit, John found, and this speaks to the amount of garbage on Thingiverse, by the way. We went through all the springs on Thingiverse. We found one spring out of like all of them, which fit the bill. It was a radial spring. I believe it's, the concept is Archimedes spiral. If you're familiar with some of these watch springs and radial springs, that was the concept. And so no, we didn't invent Archimedes spiral, but we appropriated it. And since, of course, we've seen other people use this because it was amazing. These printed springs in ABS could hold their tension and could hold it for a long time. We left, before we did a kind of aggregate prototype with printed springs hammered in the barrel, we left those springs under tension for like 5-6 days. Just as strong as when we had first wound them after we printed them, and then forced that met the test. So even if maybe they kind of deformed or photodegraded or something, ABS doesn't photodegrade, but we were testing with SLA at the time too. We knew that all right, you could print this out and at least for a week it would be good, fine, good enough. There wasn't some kind of critical flaw in what we were doing that would somehow subject it to an overwhelming or overdetermined amount of criticism. The very final test was, okay, can you have a plastic firing pin which can dent a metal primer in a centerfire cartridge? We thought about doing 22 rimfire, but the 380 worked in our barrel test, so we just went with 380 from there on. The answer, as far as we saw, was no. No matter how much force you put behind an ABS plastic firing pin, the hardness wasn't there. All right, so it wasn't about, I believe hardness was the only factor. It just wasn't hard enough to kind of make that dent in that primer. So we thought about, okay, ceramic, do you want a ceramic? No, we didn't want a multi-material gun. We thought in the end, all right, go back to the political nature of this project. It has to be something that would otherwise be innocuous and kind of unbannable or, not a specialty item or material. And so we went to the hardware store and found the most kind of bland roofing nail, that you could find. And I believe it was one of these Eagle 1-inch, 1.03-inch roofing nails. And that was it. I mean, the only other questions were, all right, how tight does the compression fit need to be on the pins? Because I didn't want screws in the Liberator, at least in the public version of the Liberator that we released. I just want everything to be press fit and plastic, and it to be white. I just remember at the time my obsession was. By the way, my mental health was not great at this time because it had been just saying it was many months of doing this, and you kind of get blinders on when you've thrown yourself body and soul into something. And I remember, John was sleeping on the floor at the time in the workshop. By the way, this workshop is kind of 3 of these panels. It's not a very big. I used to have a big workshop. No, this was it's like a closet with a 3D printer in it. It had no air conditioning. It was late April of 2013. It was getting hot, and we were all just going a bit crazy. But everything kind of, the very first time we aggregated, put it all together, we put it out on a test rig out at Lockhart at our Liberator testing grounds. And by the way, I remember this. There was an undercover cop this whole period outside my apartment in a gray police car. I have no idea to this day. We kind of waved once. I never asked him who sent him or why. But during this period, there was an undercover cop outside my apartment. Not that that's kind of just color details, So we go to Lockhart and we put it on the test rig. And this is, by the way, Andy Greenberg had come in. And it was one day I was like, no, I'm going to release this May 5th no matter what. I don't know why, but I was just dead. It had to happen. We were so worried, I think, at the time. We would have these late night conversations in a car. We would leave the phones, in the apartment, and we would go kind of out and talk. And we were just really worried. The number one concern we had is that, they know, if they care, they know. And any day we could get a national security letter telling us to stop. I wanted to put something out there the minute it worked, the kind of early and often open source idea. And then, if we could modify it, well, we'd modify it while there was time.